chug, 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 chug,
Welcome back to the Wizard Staff. I'm your host, Guy.
And I'm Blake.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly when you're talking about children's card games. Today we bring you a very special episode. It's going to be not one of our pet card episodes, but it's going to be one of our pet topic episodes. And to start us off, Blake is going to be talking about something that he has very strong feelings about and hopes to bring, maybe like a, new perspective to the topic?
Yeah, or just even start talking about the topic in general. I don't see much about it.
What's the topic that you want to talk about so much, Blake?
So it's something I've been thinking about ever since I got into EDH about 4 years ago. And I've been trying to figure out how I feel and what I think about it. And I think over enough time, I finally have the words to describe what I want to talk about. And that's kind of a problem I see is people using the word fair in EDH, and how by the end of this episode, I'm hoping to persuade you all that the concept of fair doesn't really work in EDH, and the core reason being that fair, when it is used, is often misused. So it's like a terminology episode. But we should talk about what we're drinking first, because we drink every episode.
Yes, we should. Hey, Blake, what are you drinking tonight?
Well, I am drinking this super popular, everywhere you can find it, Starburst IPA by Ecliptic. It's brewed in Portland, Oregon.
What do you think of it?
It's pretty good. It's a little dark. It's 7.8 beer, so it's great, man. Wish you could be drinking it.
Yeah, I wish I could too. You sent me on... I literally went to 8 different stores for this thing. And I called probably 3 others to say hey, do you have this? Hey, do you have this? Hey. And rejection after rejection, I was finally fuck it. And so instead, I went down to the Whole Foods I live above, and I got Arrogant Bastard Ale, which is a very fitting name for how I feel about not being able to find your stupid fucking beer. Though I still really want to try it.
Yeah.
The fact that I couldn't find it makes me just want to try it even more.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well.
So maybe one day. I guess I had to go to Portland, Oregon.
Maybe you might have to, because apparently you can't find it. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, should we just dive right in?
Yes, please, Blake.
Okay, so like I said, this episode is talking about people saying fair in EDH and how it doesn't really work, and how it's because of how the word is often misused. So to start this off, if you play any...
Wait. Can I already interrupt with a quick question?
Might as well.
Yeah, so also to kind of give a idea of what this episode is about, Blake is going to be doing a majority of the talking, and I'm going to be interjecting with some questions that, kind of give the almost devil's advocate perspective. But you've already started to say fair doesn't work in EDH. Are you specifically talking that this is used that this is often misused in EDH, or does this kind of actually apply to everything about Magic?
Well, I think that this can apply to other formats of Magic, yes, but I feel like it's especially a problem in Commander. So that might just be because I play Commander only specifically, but I guess, yeah, you're right. This can apply to all formats if I really think about it.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear because keeping the general consensus that, Magic is just used over several formats, and even though that we are a Commander-specific podcast, this can apply to other formats as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, continue.
Okay, so if any of you are listening, if you play any trading card game, whether it's Magic, YuGiOh, Pokemon, Hearthstone, or Force of Will, or any others, you will hear the phrases fair card, unfair card, fair deck, and unfair deck. Kind of get us in the right mindset. I want to start by talking about YuGiOh, and I know most of our audience is Magic players, but just hear me out here. So fair is said in YuGiOh. YuGiOh is only one format. It is 1v1 tournament competitive. That's it. Because there is only one format, all cards can be compared to each other on an even playing field. You don't judge a card based on its like super sweet art or its lore like you can with Magic cards. You only care about how powerful the card is. So because of this, only the best of the best cards are played in YuGiOh, and most cards never see play. They're just put in the trash. So many YuGiOh discussions say decks that have blatantly high win rates at these tournaments are unfair, because like eventually unfair cards are banned or are ban worthy because they are a format's most powerful cards. Usually unfair in YuGiOh is held for tier 0 decks. And what do I mean by that? Well, tier 0 deck means that only that deck being played in a tournament, well, the only deck being played in a tournament is that deck, or the deck that is specifically built to counter it. So there in YuGiOh, there are a lot of tier 0 decks throughout the years. In 2008, there was Teledad. So if you went to a tournament, if you were not playing Teledad, you weren't winning. Then in 2013 to 2015, there was Dragon Rulers. If you weren't playing Dragon Rulers, you weren't winning. There was Full Power Nekroz, start of 2015. Full Power Pepe, start of 2016. Zodiac, start of 2017. And Full Power Spiral at the end of 2017. So year after year, there was this tier 0 format after tier 0 format. And a lot of people did not like that. So calling these tier 0 decks unfair makes sense. You literally have no chance of winning unless you are playing these decks. When people complained in YuGiOh that tier 1 decks were unfair, it like really annoyed me, because you had at least like 3 or 5 other decks that could win that tournament. So over the years, Teledad cards, the very first tier 0 deck was power crept, so that those cards were let off the ban list. But that's like pretty much the only example of those tier 0 decks being unbanned or coming off the ban list at all. They're very, very strong. So with that background, I'd like to move into Magic. Almost all formats are 1v1 inherently in Magic, where the one and only goal is to win against your opponent. That, like, you can argue with me on that, but at the end of the day, most formats in Magic, it's just you only care about winning against your opponent. So they're very similar to YuGiOh in that sense. Throughout the years, Magic has had a few tier 0 decks. There was Black Summer. It was basically at the beginning of Magic's history. It was either Necropotence or non-Necropotence. If you weren't playing those 2 decks, you were not winning. Then there was Combo Winter, which had a bunch of Urza's Saga cards, and those cards were way too strong and got a lot of bannings. And then the most recent and last one was arguably Affinity, which played cards like Skull Clamp or Disciple of the Vault and all those artifact lands. And if you weren't playing that, you weren't winning. Magic has had these tier 0 decks. Generally, most of us can agree that there are at least 5 tiers in EDH. Now this is flexible, this isn't set in stone, but generally, like Jank is like tier 5, Casual is tier 4, Focused is tier 3, Optimized is tier 2, and Competitive is tier 1, generally speaking. So there aren't any tier 0 decks in EDH. Right now, Breakfast Hulk is arguably the strongest EDH deck. Even so, there are other decks that have a chance of winning against it, so it is not tier 0. Again, it doesn't make sense to complain that a deck or card is unfair or broken unless in these tier 0 decks. A tier 0 deck in EDH just isn't really possible either. New cards relevant to EDH, whether it's a new commander or in the 99 can't be that much more powerful than what already exists because WotC just isn't that dumb. WotC doesn't print cards as busted as these older cards are. And even if a commander came out that was stronger than Thrasios and Tymna one day, there are 3 other opponents that you have to face against, and together there is a chance that all 3 of them can team up against you and stop you, even if you have arguably like the best deck. Therefore, a tier 0 deck is almost impossible in EDH.
Talking about tier 0 decks, do you know what is considered probably the average win ratio for Breakfast Hulk? So if a tier 0 deck just kind of means that you kind of combo off and win almost turn 1, how often does Breakfast Hulk win on its most efficient hand, I guess?
Yeah, so arguably Breakfast Hulk is close because it has an average turn 2.81 win. So that means it's either winning like turn 2 or turn 3 pretty consistently. Side note, it was like PST was generally regarded as the most powerful EDH deck, but then they banned Paradox Engine, and now it's back to these Breakfast Hulk decks. Just quick side note. Yeah, so it's still winning turn like 2.81 and not tier 0 or turn 0, so it can't really be called a tier 0 deck. If there was an EDH deck that would win 100% of the time you played it, then this is what would happen. Like, you could call that deck unfair. You'd sit down at the table, see like what commander they were playing, and then you just wouldn't play that game because you know that there was a 100% guarantee you would lose. That's just how it would happen. Part of the problem is people call cards unfair that aren't even... This is kind of where like I'm leading into this. Part of the problem is people call cards unfair that aren't even EDH ban-worthy cards. Like, I'll hear things like, "Oh my god, Laboratory Maniac is unfair. I came here to have fun and play fair Magic." Like, they say that instead of being accurate and calling a card strong, people will call it unfair, which is problematic in a few ways. 1, that is a gross over-exaggeration. 2, by calling a card unfair, you are subtly implying that I'm cheating. Like, just by the subtext of the word and its other meanings. Like, "Oh my god, Laboratory Maniac is unfair." No, it is a strong card that I had to consider whether or not running in my deck. It does not automatically win me the game alone. You're implying I'm breaking the rules of Magic when I'm playing Labman, and that my win is invalid. Like, fuck you. I'm playing fair Magic too, and you just don't like my stronger cards and losing. I'm sorry if that's harsh. That's what's happening.
Yeah, it's not like Lab Maniac specifically won you the game. It does have the text, if you draw your library. If you draw cards from your library and you have no cards, you win the game. But oftentimes Lab Maniac, it's not like somebody lets you, go 80 turns and then draw the whole deck and do it like the natural way. There is normally just like 2-3 other cards that you have to use that have allowed you to reach the win condition, just like any other card that could be part of like a cycle. So it is a card in your deck that you have to consider running against all other cards with your deck, and you try to get the interaction that you need to win the game, just like everyone else is doing. It's just one card that, happens to, win you the game.
And I don't want to focus on Laboratory Maniac too much because it's basically just, it could be any card. It could be any card. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they will call it unfair. They will, be, very much against you playing that card. It could be Laboratory Maniac. It could be Smothering Tithe. It could be fucking Hedron Crab for all I care. Like, they will always complain about a card. And that's the root of the problem. So I'm going to kind of go into a story. So that kind of really catalyzed my thinking on this. So I went to an LGS to play some games of Commander, as one does. And I sat down asked what everyone was playing and what power level we all wanted to play at. I'm going to use fake names for this story, by the way, just because, yeah. So Tom and Jim both said, 5 out of 10 power level. I said 6 out of 10, and Craig said 8 out of 10. We all agreed to play. Then Craig won turn 7. Tom freaked out and started glaring and raising his voice. Your deck isn't fair. What is this, turn 7? That's too soon. I came here to have fun. Your deck isn't fun. I came here to play fair Magic. That's literally how he sounded, and it was with such vindictiveness and hatred. And Craig's deck was strong, but it was not unfair. Tom is an example of the worst kind of casual, one who thinks his version of fun is the only fun. Tom should not have complained, because we all talked and agreed to play with an 8 out of 10 power level deck in the pod. He should have expected a possible turn 7 win. Tom is in the wrong, not Craig. Luckily, this is an extreme example, I feel. Luckily, most people are not Tom. Most people will just say fair, unfair, instead of strong or weak. And people do this mostly because it's a buzzword, it's a filler word, and it's easy. It's easy to do, and it gets attention, so a lot of people do it. I don't even think a majority of people do this to harm one another, but I don't think they realize the ramifications that they're causing. So players are misusing fair, unfair, and they're supporting this flawed, toxic, casual mindset. So that being said, the major counter argument to everything I've said that I will hear some people say is, well, in casual EDH metas, using fair, unfair is fine. It makes sense. And to that I say, but does it really? Because when you say it's okay to use it in casual EDH metas, what my question then is, what constitutes a card being fair or unfair then? Because in my experience, that just leads to casuals complaining about cards like Ristic Study or Smothering Tithe or any other card that they choose as unfair. Fuck off. It's literally, that line of thinking is literally worse than useless, because it's an arbitrary line trying to define fair and unfair. Well, which side does this card fall in? Is it fair or unfair? It's literally arbitrary, and it can be whatever it wants. And so that's the problem with defining fair that way. It's arbitrary. And again, this line of thinking supports this toxic casual player mindset and leads to the inevitability of the story that I just told, where this person just blew up for no reason for someone playing a certain card. That is the inevitability of this.
These are all very good points. One thing that, like any card game, Magic might be one of the biggest violators among the, well, maybe YuGiOh, I don't know. This does play a factor into a lot of card games where, money. So where do you think money plays into the factor of fairness? Because someone who spends more money for better cards has a quote-unquote unfair advantage against someone who can't afford those cards, but yet those cards are just equally as quote-unquote fair, because it's not like they are, unless if your opponent is, spending, I don't know, $20,000 to them buy a banned card like Black Lotus, it's still not a quote-unquote unfair card.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point, bringing up the issue of money. If whoever can spend the most money can buy the most powerful cards. Well, that kind of leads into a different discussion, which is, is Magic pay to win? That's a different discussion, and, the gross oversimplification answer that I'm not really going to get into is yes. But that's for a different episode, maybe. So if you play EDH with all of your friends each week and find yourselves like in an arms race to buy expensive, powerful cards, then you all need to sit down, maybe put a price cap on how much you can all spend to make your decks. And this is what a lot of people do. This is what a lot of people do with their friends. They say like, hey, nobody can spend more than $50 or $100 on their commander decks, just because we don't want to get into an arms race. And that's really smart.
That's really cute.
Yeah. Well, no, it's what a lot of people do. So now that's perfect if you're with your friends, but like then if you go to an LGS, you just have to accept the fact that someone is going to have more expensive and more powerful cards than you. It's just the way life is. Sort of like how there's always someone out there in life who's smarter than you are, and you just kind of gotta accept that. So this is kind of where people Yeah?
Sorry. What about... I mean, maybe after your explanation you can go into a little more depth about this, but what about reverse it? You're the one who's going to the, LGS to play with people, and you have the $3,000 deck. What do you then also expect from people to say to you?
Well, I'm kind of gonna talk about that now, which is
okay.
It's like this is kind of like where people start to get butthurt, and it's like if you listen to our other episodes, this is why I always say when you sit down to a table, ask what power level do we all want to play at this game, because you'll find out right away that your $25 commander deck that you just made is probably not going to keep up with the $3,000 or $300 or $2,000 foiled out deck that the person next to you has. And from there, you're just like, all right, it was nice talking to you. I am going to go over to those people and see if they want to play my power level of EDH. Nice meeting you. Have a nice day. It's that simple. Like, it's kind of like speed dating. Like, you ask a few key questions, like figure out some red flags and be like, I'm gonna go over here now and talk to other people that probably fit my interests. It's that simple, honestly. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I guess either way, you can't either be butthurt that someone is playing a $2,000 deck and you have your... I say it's cute because you keep saying like $50 EDH decks. And I'm sure those do exist because people probably like try to make it a challenge to say, oh, I'm only going to spend $50 on an EDH deck. But I would average that the, normal EDH deck is probably anywhere between maybe $150 to $200.
Yeah.
On average. Not like... And that's kind of including some of the more expensive ones, though. But, okay. But then, so, A, you can't be butthurt that someone is bringing their $3,000 deck. And you also can't be butthurt that you're bringing your $3,000 deck and nobody wants to play with you. Because there is the idea that, someone comes to the table and you say, yeah, I have my 10 out of 10 deck. Oh, I have my 5 out of 10 deck.
You probably shouldn't play against each other.
Yeah, you play against each other, and then obviously the 10 out of 10 deck wins, and then the 5 out of 10's like, okay, I'm done. And they can rightfully walk away. And the 10 out of 10 person doesn't have to like call them out on it, and the 5 out of 10 person doesn't have to call them out on it, because you had a discussion, and you were able to determine, what the power levels of the deck were, and then, you kind of come to the conclusion that, oh, I don't want to play with you, and so you can just walk away.
Yeah, pretty much.
Personally, I've kind of
felt
that a little.
How so? How have you felt that a little bit?
I've talked about, my Jace deck quite a bit, and it's gotten to the point where I will only play it at the end of the night when I want to either win, because I haven't won yet, or because I want to try and do a really quick game. And I will often find that I'm like arch enemy when I play that deck. And so it's gotten to the point now where, yeah, it was fun to have. And I would rather now have like a hyper specific C EDH deck rather than just a tier 1.5 EDH deck. So I will make Jace a little more casual now. And then trying to move forward, I can, just focus on building a CEDH deck that, that can be used for when I want to go somewhere and be really competitive. But when I'm with my friends and they're all playing, I don't know, the Jace deck is probably the strongest out of all of them, but that's also because they A, spent more money, and B, it's just, pure counter, pure combo. I now realize, okay, if I want to continue playing this deck and having fun with my friends, I will want to power this down and maybe take it down to more of the 8 out of 10 range rather than the 9.5 range.
Okay, and you're doing that more of for your own personal sake than just because of the will of the others, right?
I'm doing it more for the personal sake of me, for the personal sake of my wallet, because I am not about to buy a second Grim Monolith or a second Mox Diamond, so I can run it in my Hyper CEDH Gitrog deck that'll be coming out probably, I don't know. I've looked at the price tag of this, and it'll probably be a while before it's completely finished, but I am definitely doing it more for my sake, and I would want to play with some more fun cards like Expropriate. I haven't been able to play that because it's not in the realms of the tier 1.5 let's win kind of strategy that I had with Jace. But now I am trying to make it so that, yeah, I can run that.
Okay. Well, all I'll say is when you make Gitrog and you go to an LGS, just have that discussion when you sit down at the table. Hey, what power level are we all playing at? And then, you will avoid playing against the casuals who will, at the end of the game, when you win turn 4, yell at you for playing unfair cards.
Well, are they unfair, or are you just saying they're going to yell at me for being? I'm
saying they're going
unfair?
To yell at it. They're going to yell at you for that. Saying that.
How? So, this is your personal episode. How often would you say that have you ever been called out for being unfair?
It happens almost every time I go to an LGS. I am not kidding.
Do you?
At least once.
I kind of was talking to you about this earlier, but when I'm with my friends and they say, oh, I want to play fair Magic, the way that they use it, it's almost like, I don't know, they're kind of kidding. And it's like, haha, okay. And we're just making fun of the people who call Magic unfair and fair. But do you think those people who actually call your deck unfair are being serious, or
yes,
are they just...
Yes.
Okay.
You can tell with their tone.
Okay, yeah. It's been a little difficult for me to tell whether or not my friend, a lot of us, or not us, because I'm not saying any kind of Magic is fair or unfair, because after reading this I'm like, oh yeah, these are very good points that not a lot of people actually tend to consider. But with my play group, it's just kind of oh, it seems like we're just trying to make fair, or make fun of people who, or make fun of as in, kid around that there are people out here who take this game way too seriously, and then will say this is fair or unfair Magic.
Yeah, and it's not fun. It's not great to be around.
No, and then that even gets into the concept of the philosophy document, and that Magic's just meant to be fun. Well, what's fun to everyone?
Yeah, we're kind of going down a rabbit hole now, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of wrap up my thoughts, I just kind of have a call to action, which is if you're an EDH player and you are currently and have been saying fair and unfair, just please realize your misuse of the term, and realize that all the cards are strong, not unfair, and don't just use it as a filler word, please.
Yeah, it's also, there's no card out there that doesn't have an answer to as well. And I would argue even not all all cards have at least more than one answer too. So it's not even like there are cards out there that are like, you play this and like there's nothing you can do. There's always something. It's just how you play, and proper deck building. You just have to kind of consider whether it's in your meta and someone is playing that really strong deck, what are you going to do to try and stop them? Or like, oh, okay, I'm building a deck that I want to take out to like a Grand Prix or a local game store. There are thousands of other decks. How can I best build my deck to win and also be able to interact with other people so that I can, give the best gameplay?
That's kind of what I have to say about this. We are going to, at a couple days after this episode releases, hold a poll on our Twitter saying whether or not you agree with what I have said or not, whether you agree or not with what I've said in this episode, and to hopefully leave a comment. Maybe I'm just a crazy old man, and I just need to get a reality check, but I don't think I am. And I am actually certain that I'm not. So I hope you've all enjoyed this much shorter episode of the Wizard Staff. It's been a blast.
If you want to reach out to us, please don't look at past episode descriptions. I've mentioned this in our
We have the correct email now.
We have the correct email on our new episodes. It is the Wizard Staff 101. The Wizards Staff, so there's 2 S's, 101@gmail.com. Please send us an email saying whether or not you like our episodes. You can say, fuck you guys. You drink shit every episode.
You don't know anything.
Talk about, you don't know anything. We love to hear those kind of comments. And we would love to hear make sure that, we're not just getting a bunch of bots listening to us all the time. Yeah, so send us some comments or suggestions of like what you want to hear. Follow us on Twitter, the WizardStaff101 at WizardStaff101.
Yep. All right. Thank you all for listening, and have a great night. Peace out.
Peace.